Look up the average profit margin for a cleaning business, and one widely cited industry figure puts it at around 6%. Look at what well-run small operators actually report, and the real number for a tightly managed shop is 20 to 35%, sometimes higher. Same industry name, completely different businesses hiding underneath it. Before you open a cleaning service, here's what nobody tells you. That scary 6% number isn't wrong. It's just describing a completely different business than the one you're probably picturing. It's an average dragged down by massive, low-margin commercial janitorial contractors, and it has almost nothing to do with what a small, well-positioned residential or specialty cleaning operation can actually earn. By the time this is over, you're going to understand exactly why the average for this industry is one of the most misleading numbers in this entire series. Before we talk about money, we need to talk about what a cleaning service actually is, because cleaning business is really three very different businesses sharing one name. The first is residential cleaning, houses and apartments, built on recurring weekly or bi-weekly visits to the same clients. It's genuinely one of the lowest barrier businesses in this entire series. You can start solo, book your first job within days, and get paid immediately after each visit. The second is commercial janitorial work. Offices, retail spaces, medical facilities, built on contracts that can be worth thousands of dollars a year each, but require proposals, walkthroughs, and considerably more patience to land. The third is specialty cleaning, deep cleans, post-construction cleanup, carpet and pressure washing, jobs that command premium pricing precisely because they require more skill and aren't something a client wants to negotiate down to the lowest bidder the way they might with routine janitorial work. Almost every other decision in this business, your pricing, your equipment, your growth path, flows from which of these three you actually choose to build around. Here is where this business stands apart from almost everything else in this series, because the barrier to entry is genuinely, remarkably low. A bare minimum solo residential launch, using client-supplied equipment where possible and reinvesting your first payments back into the business, can start for under $1,000. A more typical solo setup, covering a license, insurance, basic supplies, and minimal marketing, runs closer to $700 to $1,200. A more professional solo or small team setup, better equipment, a real marketing push, commonly lands between $2,000 and $10,000. And if you're building toward a small team from the start, $5,000 to $10,000 is a realistic range to cover initial equipment, insurance, and the marketing needed to land your first several recurring clients. Here's the part that catches almost everyone off guard, in a good way for once. This is one of the only businesses in this entire series where the capital-intensive version and the bootstrap version aren't separated by hundreds of thousands of dollars. A well-run cleaning business can realistically go from a few $100s in your pocket to a genuine income-generating operation faster than almost any other business we've covered, precisely because the barrier to starting is this low. So you've got your supplies, your insurance, and your first client booked. Congratulations, you're technically running a cleaning business. But low startup costs don't mean this is an easy business, and there's a set of problems here that a low barrier to entry tends to hide. The first problem is that low startup costs also mean low barriers for your competitors. If you can start this business for a few $100s, so can everyone else in your market, and that constant churn of new entrants keeps pricing pressure genuinely intense in a way capital-intensive businesses in this series simply don't experience. The second problem is that your capacity is physically capped if you're working solo. There are only so many houses one person can clean in a day, which means a solo operator's income ceiling is fundamentally limited by hours worked, not by demand. Growing past that ceiling means hiring, which introduces payroll, scheduling, and quality control challenges that didn't exist when it was just you and a bucket of supplies. The third problem is that commercial contracts, the ones that look most attractive on paper because of their size, often come with the thinnest margins in the entire industry because property managers and facility buyers are experienced at running competitive bids and driving price down between multiple janitorial contractors. The fourth problem is insurance and liability, and it matters more than the low startup cost might suggest. Many commercial clients and property managers won't even consider a bid without proof of insurance, and a single accident, a broken item, an injury, a client-specific security or liability requirement can create real financial exposure for a business that otherwise looks simple to run. Let's say you've solved the big problems. Insurance in place, first clients booked, supplies stocked. Now let's talk about what it costs every month and how differently that math plays out depending on your model. For a solo operator, ongoing costs are genuinely minimal: supplies, gas, insurance, and maybe basic marketing, which is exactly why solo operators can keep 60 to 80% of what they bring in on a typical job. The moment you add employees, that math changes dramatically. Payroll, additional insurance, scheduling software, and management overhead mean a small team generating meaningfully more total revenue than a solo operator can still net a smaller percentage margin, because labor is now the dominant cost eating into every job. And this is the part that quietly separates thriving cleaning businesses from struggling ones. Growth in this industry doesn't automatically mean more profit. It often means trading a high personal margin for a lower percentage margin on a larger total number, and the owners who understand that trade-off going in make very different hiring and pricing decisions than the ones who assume growth is simply more of the same, but bigger. Here is where the cleaning business gets genuinely interesting, because the industry-wide statistics almost everyone quotes are actively misleading about what a well-run small operation can actually achieve. That widely cited 6% average margin figure is dominated by massive commercial janitorial firms, the kind managing huge portfolios of office buildings at thin, competitively bid margins and enormous volume. Meanwhile, recurring residential cleaning work, the exact opposite end of this industry, commonly reports 30 to 50% margins before owner compensation among operators who run it well, and specialty or deep cleaning work, carpet cleaning, post-construction cleanup, pressure washing, can reach similarly strong numbers because clients aren't price shopping those jobs the way they shop a routine weekly office contract. Here's the number that changes everything. Two cleaning businesses, same city, same general services, can post wildly different profitability, not because one owner works harder, but because one built around recurring residential relationships and specialty work, while the other chased large commercial contracts assuming bigger meant better. The industry average statistic that scares off potential owners was never describing the business a smart, small operator actually builds. It was describing an entirely different, much larger, much thinner margin business wearing the same name. There are really two types of people who end up running cleaning businesses, and their trajectories look almost nothing alike. The first is the volume chaser, someone who pursues growth aggressively, adding commercial contracts and staff as fast as possible, treating total revenue as the primary success metric. This owner can build genuinely large operations. Some cleaning business owners report annual income well into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, but often does so while managing thinner percentage margins, heavier payroll complexity, and more price-competitive commercial bidding. The second is the margin-disciplined operator, someone who deliberately builds around recurring residential clients and higher-margin specialty work, staying smaller and more selective by design. This owner's total revenue ceiling is lower without significant staffing, but their percentage margin and their day-to-day operational simplicity are both meaningfully stronger, and they're far less exposed to the price wars that quietly compress margins on the commercial side of this industry. Let's run the numbers on a small operation, launched for $5,000, growing to a 3-person team within the first year. The optimistic scenario: the business builds a loyal base of recurring residential clients on weekly and bi-weekly schedules, supplementing that steady income with occasional higher-margin specialty jobs like deep cleans and post-construction work. Monthly revenue reaches $18,000 within the first year. With labor and supply costs well managed, the business holds a healthy 25% net margin, netting around $5,400 a month. The $5,000 startup investment pays back within the first few months, and the business scales steadily from there. The realistic scenario: eager to grow quickly, the owner pursues commercial janitorial contracts aggressively, winning 2 decent-sized office accounts through competitive bidding. Monthly revenue looks larger on paper, but those commercial contracts were won at thin, competitively bid rates, and payroll for the additional staff needed to service them consumes a much bigger share of every dollar. Net margin compresses to 12%, netting around $2,600 a month, less in absolute profit than the smaller, residential-focused version of the same business, despite significantly higher revenue. The difference between those two outcomes isn't how hard either owner worked. It's whether the business was built around the industry's real profit centers or around the contracts that simply looked the most impressive to win. Owning a cleaning service is not the single business the industry average statistics make it sound like. It's at least 3 different businesses: residential, commercial, and specialty, wearing one shared name, with wildly different margins hiding behind each one. The $700 solo residential launch and the $10,000 small team operation are the same business wearing different clothes. A bet that you can build around the segments where margin genuinely lives, recurring relationships and specialty skill, rather than chasing the total revenue number that looks the most impressive on a pitch deck. For the owner who understands that bigger revenue and better profit aren't automatically the same thing, a cleaning service can be one of the most accessible, genuinely profitable small businesses in this entire series.